Once upon a time, I actually made a normal BookTube video. Hey, welcome back to BellTube. I'm Brian Bell, and today I'm going to share with you the books that I'm going to be reading for the next 6 weeks. So as of filming this morning, it is the middle of November 2023, and this is what I've got on deck for the rest of the year. I think it probably makes sense to start with what I'm currently reading, and that is The Bloodstones by Tori Tekken. This is an epic fantasy. I'm only about 10% into it right now, but let me tell you, it is total fire right now. This is a fantastic start. One of the things that I've noticed about Tori Tekken is that she's very character focused. And while this is an epic fantasy, and I knew that because when I opened the book, there was a big map waiting for me, which is super cool. She's very character driven right from page one, which makes this very engaging to read, but also very easy to get into. I flew last night through the first 10% of the book. I think I'm going to get through this book very quickly because I want to know what happens to these characters. I'm already drawn in, and the world that she's creating is really unique and of great interest. So that's what I'm reading right now in physical. On Audible, I'm currently finishing up book 6 in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which is Lit RPG. I'm going to do a whole video explaining my definition of what Lit RPG is because I think on BookTube there's a lot of varying opinions on it. Dungeon Crawler Carl is one of my favorite series. After I finish it on Audible, I'll be current in the series. And as far as listening to audiobooks go, I do almost all of my Lit RPG reading via Audible. I can listen to it while I'm at work, and it makes a lot of sense for me to do that because it's a little bit more of a casual listen than, say, something like an epic fantasy where you really need to pay attention more to names and locations. Lit RPG is one of my favorite genres, but I'll be the first to tell you it's kind of like junk food for the literary mind. It's fun. It's not ever really taking itself all that seriously, and it's good snack food between big books that you're going to read that are a little bit more serious in focus most of the time. The first big novel that I'll be picking up over the next 6 weeks is book 2 in the Sun Eater series called Howling Dark. I finished Empire of Silence last month by Christopher Rocchio, is the author, and absolutely loved it. It's a bit of a dense read, which isn't bad. I like challenging work. I had just come off of reading Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe, and it was really apparent to me that the author, Christopher Rocchio, took quite a bit of inspiration from that series and from Wolfe as an author in whole. It took me a little bit longer to read Empire of Silence than it normally would, so I'm expecting Howling Dark to be a little bit more of the same. I think it's a bit bigger than the initial opener, and there's really no sentences wasted in his writing, at least that I've come across so far. And it kind of requires that you pay attention to it. But it does have a great payoff. It is an excellent book. If I didn't like Empire of Silence, there's no way I would continue. My TBR is way too long. But so far, I am very sold on the Sun Eater series. I'm looking forward to finishing it up probably by the end of November or the first week of December. The next book I'll be reading after Howling Dark is a classic science fiction book, and it's Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. I've read Childhood's End, which was one of my reads last year, which was a top 10 read for me in 2022. And I'm excited to continue along the Arthur C. Clarke journey. Most of you probably know his work from 2001: A Space Odyssey, but I've heard amazing things about Rendezvous with Rama. So one of the things that I'm trying to do for the next 6 weeks is to diversify the genres that I'm reading so nothing gets entirely stale. So while I just mentioned that I'll be reading Christopher Rocchio's Howling Dark, that's really space opera, epic science fantasy, epic science fiction, where Rendezvous with Rama is really more classic science fiction. It's a shorter book. They tend to focus more on ideas than they do on actual characters. So I'm interested to see if Rendezvous with Rama follows suit with some of the other books that I've read in the classic science fiction genre. Coming in next, after I get through Rendezvous with Rama, I am going into the urban fantasy category, where I will be reading book 9 in the Eric Carter series called Cult Classics. If you've not heard about the Eric Carter series, it's written by an author named Stephen Blackmore. It involves a necromancer based in Los Angeles, and it is a wild, wild ride. It is not for the faint of heart. There's all kinds of graphic everything you can imagine in this series. Graphic sex, graphic drug use, violence galore.
Right.
But it is really engaging if you're into urban fantasy in a really gritty, hardcore way. Stephen Blackmore pulls no punches. It's a blast. These books are amazing palate cleansers. They normally come in between about 300 and 400 pages, so you can get through them pretty quick. And one of the things that I like most about these books is that they're real chapter turners. A lot of chapters end on almost a cliffhanger, a little bit like Blake Crouch in a way, where you have to go to the next chapter, and you find yourself flying through these books much quicker than some of the dense materials that I read normally. After Cult Classic, I'm going to be picking up the second book in JCM Burns' series, and this book is called Return of the Griffin. I had a blast with the initial book. It's almost like a space fantasy superhero. It's an indie book, which fits in with what I'm trying to do over the next 6 weeks, and that's pile in a lot from a bunch of different genres. I thoroughly enjoyed his first book in this series, and I know from a lot of other booktubers out there that I'm in for more of the same with Return of the Griffin. It's cool. I like comic books. I grew up reading comic books, so this is really an interesting way of almost like reading a literary version of comics. But I suspect as this series goes on, the characters are going to grow deeper, and I'm going to be more engaged with probably an ever-growing cast that the author has got going here. The next book on my lineup is called Hard Magic by the author Larry Correia. It is what has been told to me is like a grim noir fantasy detective-y kind of magical book set in kind of a 1930s, 1940s atmosphere. Again, this is really different than everything else on my TBR for the next 6 weeks. I'm really excited for this because I've read the Saga of the Forgotten Warrior by the same author, Larry Correia, and I'm through books 1, 2, and 3 in that series. I'm waiting for book 4 to try on Audible. Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, I've read in physical copy, but Madison Goodyear, who is a friend of the channel, has recommended that I try it on Audible. So I'm waiting for book 4 to come out for that. But since I really enjoyed the author, and Bryce over at Shelf Centered was going through his top 100 fantasy books of all time, and he brought up Hard Magic, I remembered that this has been on my TBR for probably 2 years. So I think it's time before the end of the year to go through Hard Magic and to see if it's worth the acclaim that a lot of people have said it is. Moving on from there, I'm going to more cult fantasy into Discworld. I'm going to be reading the second book in the City Watch or sub-series within Discworld. This book's called Men at Arms. I read Guards early, kind of, I want to say late spring, early summer this year, and I thoroughly enjoyed Guards. Now, this is coming from somebody who barely ever DNFs a book, and I DNF'd The Color of Magic, which is the first book in the Discworld series chronologically in terms of published order. I DNF'd it twice. I still not picked it up. I just did not like the book. I didn't hate it, but I was so bored with it that I really shelved Discworld for probably, I'm going to guess, about 3 or 4 years. Please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting that post notification bell so you never miss out when BookTube comes up with a video. Because I am BookTube, and you don't want to miss my videos. As far as Audible goes, there are several lit RPGs and progression fantasies that I'm going to get through from now to the end of the year. I'm going to be finishing up books 10, 11, and 12 of the Cradle series by Will White. Cradle, for most people on BookTube, is a very beloved progression fantasy series. I have had serious gripes with it. I will say, though, I will give the caveat, I will admit when I'm wrong, that it does get better. That said, a series, in my humble opinion, should not take 7 books to get good. For me, and I'm going to do a more deep dive when I get through the entire series about what I really think about Cradle as a whole. But the first half of the series, at least the first 5 books, it was rough going for me. And again, I'm somebody who reads a ton of lit RPG. I've probably got 200 to 250 lit RPG books under my belt. Cradle, the first half of the series, absolutely did not work for me, but I'm enjoying it enough to finish it out. The next one is Reaper, followed by Dreadgod, followed by Waybound, and then I'm going to come back and do a full series breakdown on why I did not like the first half of the series, and hopefully why it redeemed itself for the second half. But I really do think that's a big ask, to be thinking, I'm going to put this huge series out there, and even in the best case scenario, there are booktubers out there like Petrik that are very high on the series, but will warn you, hey, it could take till book 3 to get interesting. And for a lot of people, getting through 2 books is a big ask. So we'll get to more on Cradle as I finish it up. After that, I'm going to be listening to a book called Wings Spread. And I can't remember the author's name. Oh, Sean Oswald. That's what it is. It's by Sean Oswald. It's book 2 in his new lit RPG series, where we follow the adventures of a dragon who's actually in human form going to some type of a school. It's pretty cool. The big selling point for me on this series, honestly, is the narrator, Neil Helligers. I'm going to be doing a deep dive at some point here, hopefully soon, on my favorite Audible narrators. And I can tell you right now, it's not a spoiler, Neil Helligers is in my top 3. The guy is awesome. He brings books to life that I probably would give just okay ratings to if it was going to be an I read. But when I listen to Neil Helliger's performance, the book elevates. I'm excited to be getting into Wings Spread, book 2 in that series. And I'm going to hopefully have all of these book titles over this shoulder or over this shoulder. I have no idea. Yeah. You guys, I've been doing this for like 4 videos. I don't even know what I'm doing yet. But one of my shoulders will have books over it. That I can promise you. So that's what I've got lined up to read from the middle of November till the end of December. I'm thinking that it's going to be an exciting 6 weeks of reading. It's great holiday fare, and it's diverse enough and it's spread out through enough genres where I really think I'm not going to get into any book burnout having too much of one thing. So as usual, at the end of my episode, I want to leave you with one for the road. Today's one for the road is going to be about gratitude. And we've all heard about how important it is to live our lives with gratitude. As usual, I want to break this down into the ridiculously minuscule amount that you can do today, hopefully improve your day, and bring you something of value for watching this video. I know when I express gratitude to other people, and you do it in a sincere way, they end up feeling better for it. And I end up feeling better for it. So one thing that I'm going to ask of you today is say, how can I express gratitude to somebody that is not a huge big deal, but maybe just enough to help their day get a little bit better? It could be a smile to a friendly face. It could be thanking somebody at work for seemingly an ordinary task, but maybe something that they're never thanked for. And if you don't have anybody physically around you, how about this? Thank yourself. Express a little gratitude to yourself for getting out of bed today, doing the best you can. Life isn't easy, especially right now. There's a lot of distractions out there, and a lot of the times we just kind of put our head down and go about our day, and we never thank ourselves. And I think that's really important to do. So thank somebody else if you can. If you don't run into anybody, thank yourself for doing something good for yourself. I'll see you in the next video, and here's your fortune.